Hi everyone. Hi Christina. Hello. Hi, good to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining. As you know, I am Asma and I am from SupportRoom, and very frequently we meet here and we do our interlife sessions to raise awareness about mental health and everything well-being, to get your ideas and raise awareness and break down the stigma attached to mental health. And we're really excited to have you here. Thank you so much. Hello. I see some regular faces here. I see some new faces as well. Hello. We're just going to wait. Hi, Sasha. We're waiting for Ed to join us, and we've got a really interesting topic, a very current topic today, about mental health and in the workplace, breaking down those barriers and those stigmas. And I'm just going to let Ed in, who is our guest for today, and hopefully we'll have a really good conversation. Looking forward to it. Hello Ed, how are you?
Hi, you all right? Yeah, I'm all good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to see you. So we are here today to talk about workplace mental health. So basically, let me just introduce you. You're Ed, you're a dentist, and you are. Tell us about yourself then, Ed.
Yeah, that's right. So basically, I'm a dentist down in Southampton with an interest in anxieties and mental health, and treating people with anxieties often leads to providing dental solutions and treatments, which for those of you that don't know is making people a little sleepy, so they can actually go ahead with treatment which they otherwise wouldn't have access to. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a brief nutshell. I know we've not got a huge amount of time, but that's the brief bio.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. And, basically, let's just start off with work-life balance. Okay, and that's something that's not just in demanding teams, but also in very different organisations. So, how do you, sorry, Ed, could I just ask you to put the volume down a little bit? I think we're echoing.
That's all done.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's much better. So yeah, just talking a little bit about work-life balance, and what do we use that a lot, don't we? We talk about, it's good to keep work-life balance. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your take on that?
Yeah, so I think one of the questions that you were asking was whether there was a particular trick to use or anything in particular that would be sort of helpful. And I think it's all very easy quite often to look for tricks of the trade, and we can search online and try and find a tick box which we try and categorize things to say this will work or this works for that person and compare each other to each other. And I think one of the big things to say is I don't think there is a massive trick to do. I think the biggest thing is to look inside. So it's quite introspective, finding that work-life balance, which seems a little bit unusual because you think, well, work is the issue. But actually, the issue sometimes is a bit deeper. It's with you, what's not working for you. And I think a lot of the time, we'll come to it in a bit with the lockdown scenarios, that these issues become more, they resonate slightly more when you've got, space, time, and isolation, and you start to pick these things apart. So what I would say is there's no real trick, but I think the key thing is to identify what makes you happy. And I think a lot of that starts with the values that you have. So, for example, a trick which I would say, if I was to pitch a trick at all, was to find 5 things that make you happy at work or 5 things that make you unhappy. Put them in, put them down, and try and find the common links between each of these. And then start working with why does it make me happy? Why does it make me unhappy? And find ways to mitigate those. And I think from there, you can start to develop your own work-life balance. one of the things which I found is, you know, as a young guy, you come into the workplace and you think, right, you're going to work all the time. And then you start thinking, well, working's not life. You know what I mean? You work to, you don't live to work, you work to live, you know? So then you've got to get that balance right. So recently, after the lockdown, I sort of picked these things apart. In the end, I ended up reducing, you know, down to 4 days a week, and things have become much more sort of improved. And having these discussions at work, which we'll go through, also is another key factor.
And I think that's actually really good advice, because we know already that gratitude is something, and what makes you happy is something. What you're thankful for is a common kind of tool that therapists use to kind of put things into perspective. Actually, rather than what's going wrong, what is actually going right. So equally in the workplace environment, you also picked up on individual differences, and what could make me feel stressed may be actually a happy place for you. So, you're right, there isn't unfortunately a book to kind of prescribe, well, you know, this is what you do when you feel like this, because we are all different, aren't we? I think that's an excellent point. The other thing that you kind of touched on was, you know, what stress is. You know, when we think about stress at work, we sometimes think of, is it the volume of work? Is it people? You know, there's so many different aspects of that, isn't it? But ultimately, it's that loss of control. I think whatever the situation is, it's that loss of control and kind of managing the day to day. And like you said, and you've given an excellent tip. You know, writing it down, journaling it. What are the positives? That's really important. You also touched on lockdown, and I know that's something that we've you know, we've all been going through, and it's stressful time of uncertainty, working from home. You know, for some people, you know, it works well for them. For others, it doesn't. You know, how is there anything that you can suggest, or what's worked for you or people that you know, to balance that?
So in terms of the lockdown sort of side of things, I think lockdown has given us quite a big opportunity to actually identify what is becoming important in our lives. You sort of, the distance which we've had from each other, from work, from the norms of going to bars, restaurants and things, we haven't got that. So you get to begin to kind of pick apart what's important. So for some is exercise important, for others is, you know, reading and actually looking at yourself and going for walks or finding your hobbies and targeting different things that you can actually pin your life on, that's reliable, which is not dependent on other people. And also you start to see, well, things that you thought were important before, which are now not existing at all, yeah. Or people that you thought were important regularly and you valued and you put all of your values based on their sort of endorsement, based in effect, they maybe are a lot more distant now, and you actually maybe consider the closeness that you had in different relationships, and other people have come through. So I think it makes people reassess the support networks. And I think to get through the lockdown, there's many different ways that you can do it, but I think the big thing is things like communicating with people, reaching out, letting people know if you do need things, if you're okay, not okay, or, you know, trying to find new things that work for you, which actually, to be honest, well, hopefully we never get a situation like this again, but in terms of the lockdown, is a very unique sort of experimental situation for yourself to try new things and find a new balance.
I think something that, particularly for me, you know, was setting those boundaries of where to kind of draw the line between work and, you know, your personal life, because there are no boundaries, are there, when you're working from home? You can open the laptop at a time where you usually wouldn't, you know. So I think the setting the boundaries, trying to maintain routine is something that really helped me, and I know other people as well, to actually say, right, it's 6 o'clock, I'm clocking off, you know, and that's my time done, so that's my relaxation time. And I think that's actually quite a difficult thing to comprehend when you are working from home and the time's just getting blurred. So don't know what you feel about that, and what your take was on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Certainly during the first lockdown, as many of you know, that we were completely just told from one day to the next, we were just from open to closed. And suddenly, like we say, the carpet was pulled beneath you and you had all of your normal life was gone. So I think it's right. You need to find a structure. You need to find a way of getting routine, and definitely leaving work at work and life, being your home life. That's one of the biggest things. I mean, to give you an example, I've worked in the past on call in the hospital setting, and I remember sort of one of the big things that, the challenges was you would work all the time, and the job in the hospital is never done. If you stay at work, you can always do more. But there's always a cycle, and just by taking that step back and saying, actually, I'm leaving, just if you're not leaving your house, maybe do your work in a different room, leave the computer in a different room, walk out of that room.
Yeah, Hassan's made a really good point. I'm just reading the comments.
Yeah, I was trying to read them at the same time.
Yeah, you've made a really good point, actually, to kind of get dressed into your work attire and do your work, and maybe you specific. I think thank you very much for that, Hassan. But keeping those boundaries, like physical boundaries as well. And I know Sasha mentioned as well that it would, to kind of remember to keep those personal connections with your loved ones, your friends, your family. Obviously, we're living in a very technological, digital world now. You can be in touch with people from across the world. So I think that's really, really important. You mentioned exercising, and I am not one that loves to exercise. I'm going to put my hands up there. But you know what? Actually, it really does. It releases those chemicals, it gets you moving. It's really important to do that. So I think that's really insightful.
I think also making sure that if you've got a lunchtime that you would normally have as a protected time, do your walk then, or take your lunch out with you, and then have that break from just staying in one room.
Absolutely, to break from that. I mean, going back now and moving, like obviously lockdown is something that is very current, but general kind of work-life balance, and going back to it. Some people are, going back to that, our culture that we have right now of, to strive and to work shows that the more you work, the more dedicated you are. The more you work, the more likely you'll be noticed by your boss. That's the culture that we're living in, and those boundaries that we're talking about during lockdown, how important do you feel they are to maintain, whether you're in lockdown or not, and actually what effect that has on someone's mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things that people may be sort of, broadcasting at the moment is when they come back, the uncertainty with job security and things like that, they'll feel that they have to work harder to prove that they're more valued than someone else. And I think one of the big things is your success doesn't necessarily have to come at the expense of someone else's failure. You know what I mean? So I think in terms of maintaining the same balance as that you found before, it'd be a shame to literally come back into a work environment and bin all the growth that you've done at home. I think you can still maintain these same structures and procedures. If you work in an office, you can have your lunch, do your exercise walk over the course of, your lunch break. Get outside, and, in a way, there'll be many easier things. I mean, I think a lot of people, there's been issues with, alcohol consumption and things like that for many people. That will be another factor that you won't have to sort of, you obviously can't drink at work, particularly in our profession. But obviously, for a lot of people, that became an issue. So now you're going to be able to go outside. You've got, the space and the mental space and the quiet time to collect your thoughts again. I think you can still maintain those. And I think, like I say, make a list. And, you can have Post-its all around your house at the moment, but make a list of things that you think work for you and implement those at work, and make work your, second home, the happier environment.
And it's really important. And again, kind of going back to, stress in the workplace, stress in life, that, is research shows that that's a kind of pathway to developing really kind of serious mental health issues like depression, even, anxiety, and even down to, suicidal thoughts. So the importance of kind of breaking those barriers down and actually having these conversations of things that you can do yourself that are in your control to kind of help yourself. And it's okay to feel bad or stressed, we all do, we're all human, but what we can do to help ourselves. I want to move on from what we can do to help ourselves, or to how we can help other people as well. And things that we can do to break down those barriers of kind of workplace stress or mental health issues, and kind of the communication lines that we can have with management, or so the one thing that I wanted to touch on, and I know, is that stigma about talking about mental health at work. Just I wanted to kind of get your view on that, really.
Okay, yeah. So I think there's a couple of sort of ways that you can tackle work-based mental health issues. And I think the first thing is to identify what it is that's making you unhappy. And I think sometimes this is very easy to say that, oh, it's this person, or it's this situation, or this thing that I don't like. Other times, though, I think you need to peel that back a little bit further and seeing what actually is the cause of that. So an example which I would say is to look at, you know, is these issues work specific, or is it a personal issue that I'm bringing to work? Is it something that's more internal that just manifests at work? I can't vent this at home, but I'm going to use work as my sort of catharsis and try and, you know, things that are bottled up at home, you feel like, oh, I've got to be strong in front of the family. I can't say this or this or this. Your patience is shorter at work. You start snapping at people at work. I think it's key to kind of track down what it is that is actually giving you the issue, and also kind of then, like I say before, find ways to improve those situations, which will go through them. But for example, always try to have something to look forward to at work. But you know, at the end of the day, where are you going? What are you doing? What's, cook a dinner or something, spend family time, see what you can actually, do outside of work and set goals. I know we can't necessarily have activities outside of work, but there are ways to achieve the work-life balance still. The other thing that I would say, we said before, leave work at work and home is home. And again, by making work a happier environment, it can be as simple as things that, we have to sort of pick apart. One important thing before I go into that is there's different types of work. So for us, we work in a building, it's me and my nurse, and that's pretty much the core. Other people will be, going straight out, and that'll be it. They'll be in a very solitary environment. So where is their, comfy workplace if they're in the middle of a field in the rain in the winter, for example? So ideas of kind of, having photos on your phone, for example, or music that you can listen to, or arrange a phone call which common time which you and your partner or you and a family member can talk. That's another sort of, these tricks that can work. And I think one of the big things I got taught by someone was, if you're beginning to get stressed at work, find out what it is that's causing that stress. And is it just your response to what you perceive is going to happen? So I think the way that I would pick that apart is, if you've got a difficult conversation to have with the patient or something like that, just think, well, that's not happened yet. Why are you thinking about the worst case? And often it's not the worst case scenario. So let's strip it back and find out, this is the work, this is the issue. Let's see how it goes and take things bit by bit. And I think there was quite a good sort of way to, portray that. There was something I saw the other day that said that fear doesn't prevent death, but fear does prevent life. And that's kind of what you fear for is going to stop you living, but at the same time, it usually isn't going to kill you.
Yeah.
So those were the key things. And then I thought, well, there are kind of a few little ways to bring that up into work, which I think you were coming on to sort of work advocates of sort of mental health and things, which I didn't know whether you wanted to bring that in yet.
On, it would be great if employers are able to complete regular mental health check-ins with their staff. Now, how much responsibility do you think employers or the leadership team in companies have on kind of checking in on mental health of their employees?
I mean, I'm not a legal expert, but I think there should be more of a responsibility to protect workers. And also I think that will come through getting more awareness of, training and things like that. And one of the key things there is you could actually build that in as part of core training of specific roles and have specific advocates. I think you need more than one, because let's face it, two people might not get on. Yeah. So you're asking people to come forward with things they wouldn't necessarily discuss with family, to then go to someone at work.
100%. I know that I work in in the education sector. And I know more and more departments in education, whether it's schools or colleges, are employing kind of independent kind of mental health experts that are not part of the kind of hierarchy of line to report, and how effective that has been, and what research has shown to have that independent person that you can go and talk to, that won't think, actually, you know, is this person, won't question the fact that, okay, this guy's not coping, this girl's not coping, this is going to affect their health, and have those preconceived notions. And this independent person is there and then give them that support, that personal support. So I think that is something that is probably required, and kind of awareness day is to raise the profile of awareness day, and actually to have that in our common language now, to talk about mental health and talk about issues that different people face. And I think that's such a key thing, because all of us aren't comfortable, are we, to go and speak to our bosses about feeling low, or feeling like they're out of that, I'm losing that control, because they're going to think I'm not going to be able to do my job. Obviously, I would think that. So I think that's a really good point that you raised. So thank you very much for raising that. And then again, breaking down what we were talking about, Ed, like, do you think that you mentioned about, I wanted to talk a little bit about how colleagues kind of spot signals, and kind of making ourselves aware of what the signs and signals are through having kind of those conversations. How important is it for colleagues to act as their support systems? We spoke about the leadership teams, but what about your colleagues? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think colleagues is an interesting one, because in one regard, I think colleagues are pretty much a critical determining factor in workplace sort of mental health and happiness. Let's be completely honest, we're not designed to get on with everyone. We'll have different personalities, we'll have different, you know, beliefs and value systems. And it's just finding ways to cooperate within that sort of network of different personalities. So I think it's important to, you know, be a little bit mindful of these things. So not everyone is a bad person if you don't see eye to eye. Not everyone's a good person if you do see eye to everyone. So I think you've got to assess the benefit of individual relationships within work for yourself, and see which ones are stronger, which ones are less, but also understand that sometimes, you know, beliefs and values change as well. So you've got to be adaptable and receptive of these people, and actually there can be a lot of value in different opinions. Certainly a lot of my friends will not just tell me my belief is right, or I'm right in this. You know, they'll tell me quite honestly, they'll say, right, I get that, but actually, have you seen this? And I think you're wrong. So actually, there's the growth that you get from having, you know, honest relationships with people at work. And I think that's the thing that we really need to sort of understand as well, is what is the cause of any frictions within work? Is it, you know, a misconception? Is it actually fact that you know, there's a lot of, school ground, sort of playground stuff that kind of happens sometimes, and one person said this and hearsay and chat, but I think actually then you need to find a professional way to approach these, because a lot of these people are colleagues, you have to work alongside them. And again, you want to make work happen.
Goes back to kind of like what we spoke about, people perhaps some training to, you know, what do you think about kind of leadership teams getting trained on, you know, things to specifically deal with like conflict resolution and kind of other kind of psychological check-ins? So, I mean, have you had any experience? Have you seen anything like that in organisations in your field? Or
yeah, so when I was in London down at King's Hospital, they did do a session on conflict training. If I'm being honest, it was more about de-escalation and finding ways to calm situations down and not to escalate things. But there's not, I would say there's not been a huge amount that I've experienced in, you know, dental jobs, hospital jobs, universities, or, you know, any sort of aspects of mental health training that I've become aware of. And that's why I think there is this big unmet need that should be implemented in work and to protect employers. And like I say, that could easily just be implemented. One person, one bit of training. I did a sort of a quick search last night, CPD courses available. Get 2 people trained up on that. anonymous sort of catch-ups, and sort of then bring it into the workplace as a more open sort of policy.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really important. I think the one thing that we need to change, and I know it is changing, but organisations need to start looking at their policies and their procedures on protecting their staff from various different things, with well-being and mental health, and these things need to be implemented. But that is a change that, we're hoping to see by having these conversations that we're, having now. And I just want to thank you very much, because you raised some amazing points, and I think what people need to start realizing is that actually your performance at work is related to how well you recruit yourself and the time that you do spend on self-care. And I think, just to keep it in the most simplest level, that we need to keep that work-life balance, and those boundaries that you spoke about right at the beginning are so important, whether you're at work physically or working remotely at home during lockdown. And we need to look after ourselves. We need to support our colleagues that we may think that, if you're seeing any signs, we need to check in and just have those conversations and say, hey, how's it going? And, more than likely someone will be like, yeah, okay, checking in again if you have that gut instinct, and supporting each other. The more we talk about these things, the more change we'll be able to see. So I really want to thank you for your time, Ed. The last thing I want to talk about is, obviously, at SupportRoom, we are our platform for digital therapy and message therapy, and obviously in a changing world, what are your thoughts on this type of therapy, and using texting and video calls when you're reaching out for support?
Yeah, so it was interesting because, to be honest, I learned about SupportRoom through Hassan, who obviously did the live a few weeks ago, and up until that point, I didn't aware that there was more out there and things like that. And I think this is why things like this will raise the profile of support services like this. And certainly promoting, today's live talk was actually really interesting for me, and probably as feedback for you guys and all the audience, is when I mentioned to people about it and shared the posts and the links and asked people to join in, the number of people that were saying, that I didn't know, were saying, actually, this would be really important, this is good, and they were feeding off of that, not just to support me, but to support the service. And I think a lot of the time, a lot of what people find is mental health services are massively overstretched. The access isn't really there. Even if you go through NHS services, you can be referred to counselling services that are, relatively short duration, at times which are properly impact on work schedules, so people can't go. And I think the importance is the big word here, which I would say that SupportRoom offers, is access. And not only is it access to, at any time of the day, to qualified professionals, it's the access to different mediums and different things. To have a face-to-face conversation like this, to, a camera, to an audience of people that I don't know, or you don't know, and that's very intimidating for some people. So to be able to send them a text message and say, I'm not all right, or to kind of say, I want to chat to someone, I want to speak to someone, I want a phone call, I want a message, is, to be honest, I think you guys have probably hit one of the biggest unmet needs that there is, and that's why I was keen to kind of get involved. So I was, very pleased to kind of that Hassan put me forward, and you guys were receptive of all of that, because I think it's a great sort of thing you've got.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your support. It's been such an interesting discussion, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in, because obviously without you, your comments, it's just, we're raising the profile here for mental health. We're trying to break down the stigmas, breaking down those taboos, and we want to talk more and more about subjects like this. And Ed, I really appreciate you taking time out to speak to me today.
No, absolutely. Anytime. If you want to do any more, I'm more than happy to do Q&A sessions whenever.
Thank you. It was really, really interesting. You have a good night. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Okay, good night. Bye-bye.
Have a good time, guys. All the best. Bye.
Bye.